This is the Team Performance Podcast, where we explore issues at the heart of leadership, team development and organisational culture. I'm your host, Mark Gilroy, and in this episode we're joined by leadership performance coach Dolly Waddell, who helps explore what's required in a new era of leadership. In our discussion, Dolly challenges traditional notions and models of leadership, sharing insights from her own leadership journey around how a deeper understanding of ourselves can profoundly impact leadership style and effectiveness. Dolly also explores the critical role of empathy in understanding and motivating teams, offering insightful strategies for enhancing team dynamics and fostering a culture of authentic communication. So welcome to the latest in our series of interviews. I am thrilled to be joined by Dolly Waddell. Dolly is a UK-based leadership performance coach, and she spent over 15 years developing and coaching both private clients and businesses, and in that space, she works with a number of different leadership methodologies, as well as creating her own models. Thank you so much for joining us, Dolly.
Oh, thanks, Mark. It's really lovely to be here.
And hopefully nice for you. I'm really well, thank you. Hopefully nice for you to be on the other side. When I know you've got your own podcast, which is wonderful. I really enjoyed listening to that, and hopefully nice for you to be on the other side of the
it's really
microphone.
Lovely to be on the. Yeah, it's really nice. Actually, to be honest, just having a good conversation either side of the mic is always fun, and
it is.
helps learn lots more, which is always good.
So maybe a good place to start is with your own journey around leadership. Can you say a bit more about your own career and what leadership looks like to you at different stages there?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very big question, but I think I was reflecting on this before our conversation, thinking about when did I first recognise that leadership was a thing? And I think it's when I was about 6 or 7, in Jersey, of all places. My dad runs a jewellery firm, a family business, and he used to do jewellery shows in Jersey, and I used to go along. And I have a very clear memory of just realising, oh, this is cool. My dad's the boss. He's in charge. And all these people were coming to this jewellery show, and I was kind of important because I was the boss's daughter. So I had this rather... and I went to boarding schools as well at the age of 8. So I always saw leaders as the ones in charge, in a very kind of traditional sense of the word. They were always men. They were always quite tall, weirdly. And so I just always thought that's what a leader was. Obviously, I don't think that now, everyone, just in case you're wondering. I have expanded my horizon since then. But yeah, I think that was my earliest understanding of it. And then over time, I think realising that as a young woman growing up and I was very grateful to go to good schools where my voice and my who I am was recognised as significant. I realised, I want to play that game too, but I'm a woman. What does that mean? And then I've had a bit of a growth journey in my own sense of leadership as a woman, and therefore in how I see leadership, probably in more recent years, like in the last decade. So I'm 42 now. So really in my sort of 30s is when I started to really understand leadership as a different thing to the one I've been brought up with.
Thank you for sharing that. And so what was it like having that conversation with yourself around just changing that archetype about what leaders look like and feel like and sound like?
Well, actually, that conversation with myself probably comes much later, so even 5 years ago. And so a little history on me in a potted version. Went to university, worked in film production, did very well in it. I was only doing it for 4 years, but did quite well up the career ladder in that space, was earning quite a lot of money at the age of 23. And then I had a real career change because I didn't love film, and I actually just wanted to be in films. I didn't want to be... I wanted to be an actress probably more. I was on the wrong side of the camera. And then I switched and went into youth work. I think that's when I started to see, mentoring, that's where it's at. So that got right into the core of me. And then I was married. I got married at 25 to a vicar. So I've been a vicar's wife for a long time. And what comes with that is very much a role of mentorship and coaching more. So I've just evolved in that space. But as a woman, I think it was, without realising, unconsciously, I just sort of did it as a nice thing to do, to mentor people, because that's kind and nurturing, and coaching is kind and nurturing. And it was about 5 years ago that I actually had this big mirror moment, I call it. I talk about it with my clients quite a lot. When I looked in the mirror, and I went away on a retreat, actually, Mark. I've got 4 kids. I don't know how to be on my own. I'm not very good at it. And I thought I must go and have a retreat day. And so I went off on my own and was in this hotel. And I was so bored. I didn't know what to do. So I just sat in front of a mirror and looked at myself. And, just like, oh, look at my hair. It needs a dye. I need to trim it. But then I started really looking at myself, like way beyond the superficial stuff. And I saw inside me a woman that I didn't know, which I know we're going quite deep now, but I saw this woman and I thought, oh my gosh, she is not playing in her playground. Like, she's lost. And I realised that it was probably a realisation. I wouldn't use the word leadership in this moment, but I probably would in regard to this conversation. I recognised I wasn't leading myself properly, and that I was just doing fill-in roles as mentoring and coaching in my work, rather than actually integrating it with that slightly more archetypal type of leadership, which is more pioneering and being decisive and building and pushing. I wasn't doing that. And that's where, for me, came a real shift in my understanding of my own leadership and in my own career and my own approach to leading myself.
Wow. That's so metaphorical, isn't it? Looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing something different than...
Oh, do you know, Mark, I actually say to people, I think if anyone now has got today a moment, make a moment, have a mirror moment, like look in the mirror, and this sounds so ridiculous. Put some classical music on, shut the doors, turn your digital things off, and almost allow your soul to kind of get stuck in with the experience and really look at yourself. Because I think often we hit our mid-years, so I'm in my 40s, we kind of we're rolling with it. With all our responsibilities, we're just rolling with it. Whenever we look at ourselves in the mirror, we're just going, do I look good? Do I not? Oh, look, I've got a tummy. Oh, no, I haven't. We're not actually looking at ourselves. And I think there's something very profound about really looking into your soul, yourself, to see what's going on there. People want change. They want to grow their business. They want to help their marriage. They want to work on their teenage children issues, whatever it is. I reckon you'll get more answers looking in the mirror sometimes than maybe just buying another book of how to,
Cool. Wow. I do know. And it's making me think about, I spent some time, probably about 10 years ago, learning how to take photographs. I got really into photography. Still am, in a way. Yeah. And one of the things that always struck me that was very unusual about photography, especially when you take photos of people, is that you may think you've taken the most beautiful picture, a beautiful portrait or candid shot of a family or a couple or a person, and one person in that group will look at that photo and immediately dislike it because you've captured something about them that either they don't like to see or is completely alien to them.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very unusual about the way the psychology of perception works when we look at ourselves hard in the way that you're talking about. That does really, it can be really transformative.
It is, and actually what you're saying there, I think there's something about, this circles back probably to how I see leadership now, like good leadership, effective, whole leadership, as opposed to broken half leadership. So when I say whole, I mean like the whole self of it. That it's when you can reconcile yourself with yourself. Does that make sense? So because it means then there's less space for ego, there's less sense for, I don't like that part of me, I'll shut it down, don't show that photo. It's how do we play that out in businesses, in teams? There's parts of us we don't like. So maybe where do we shut that down and sabotage those areas that don't suit us it plays out in that way. And so being able to know ourselves and then reconcile ourselves with ourselves, that's a journey. Which I think is a really important one to take as a leader.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues about self that often comes up in the conversations I've had in coaching discussions, but just in general conversations with people, is people get into really that sense of, well, what self am I talking about here? Particularly when it comes to leadership. I don't know if you found this with any of your coaching clients, that people almost feel like they need to start developing this different person when they step into a leadership role. Whereas actually, right. Isn't that weird? That they kind of
put on my new leadership self.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That you've never worn before and doesn't really exist.
Yeah. I think it depends on the person, doesn't it? Like, I totally know those people, and there's a real sense of keenness. So where people love potential, like some people just love realizing potential. They love the word potential. They camp around potential. They love development because of potential realized, and that's really fun and eager. I think sometimes that can be where people are like, "Ooh, let's put that on." So there's those types of people, which I relate to that. Yeah, I can see that. But then there's some types of people, though, that I think that working on the self, whether it's some version of themselves or really themselves, they think it's woolly and unnecessary. We just got to get business done. There's there's a disconnect with actual business. It's a sort of nice to have. So there's that as well. And then there's people in the middle who I would say are kind of open, but kind of integrate it more naturally. I mean, I've been very simplistic there, just applying 3 types of people. But I would say in my experience, that's kind of the 3 types of people I might engage with. And I'm like navigating which approach do we have with which.
Yeah, and a really common and this is the very strange one. I think it's kind of almost counterintuitive, but it's come up so many times in people that I've worked with is this self-enforced kind of isolation. I remember working with someone a little while ago who'd taken on a leadership role at a company that they'd been with since they were really quite young. So they'd kind of grown up in this business and they'd grown up with this group around them, and they'd been this role had been bestowed upon them. And their first one of their first decisions was to cut themselves off from pretty much all of their traditional support network in their group, because in their view it wasn't appropriate for them to be friends anymore.
Yeah. So
there was almost like this sort of self-imposed, almost Yoda-style isolation, where they'd taken on this new self, and as part of that archetype, it meant I'm going to be pretty much alone in this ivory tower, because it's not appropriate for me to have friendship-style relationships with the people that I am leading, and I found that fascinating because it made them incredibly lonely. And in need of enormous amounts of support that they would have ordinarily, naturally got from those individuals that they'd kind of cut off.
I see that too, and my penny's worth on that. And I think it's a really natural and understandable paradigm for some people to have. And I think the reason being is it comes from that slightly antiquated model of leadership, much like the one I saw as a young girl, whereby someone's in charge. And when someone's in charge, everyone around is like, oh, yes, do be in charge. We like someone being in charge. It's a bit like the superintendent. We're like, oh, good, you're in charge. And we put them on a sort of pedestal representing the role of leadership rather than, oh, there's a human behind the role. And so it becomes not a human role. It's like just a labelled role. And when we put them when they either put themselves on the pedestal or we put them there, it's very difficult for them to get off, because if they do, they will disappoint the masses, because like, oh, you're human, that's not cool, get back up there. So it's easier to be up there because if they're down here, then they don't know how to do leadership at this level if they've got that antiquated paradigm. So does that make sense? So I think it is difficult if you're coming from a slightly antiquated model of leadership, coming into more our world as it is now. And I think we're in a massive reformation of what leadership is. I think there are so many books coming out on it for that very reason. We're all grasping. It's like we're falling down a cliff, holding on to pieces of grass, holding on, going, oh, is it this? No, that fell down. Oh, is it this? No, that fell down. Is it this? No, that fell down. And that's why there's so many fads with it, right? Like, oh, we've got the new thing. And actually, we're learning at the moment because we're in such a new era, such a new age of leadership and how to lead and what leadership means. And even outside of business, it's just, you just look at, the generations coming up behind us, they've been so hurt and broken by certain types of leadership. So then they are pinging to whenever humans are hurt, we often ping to a completely opposite extreme before it balances out. So yeah, it's a complex space we're in to pull apart leadership, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of models and kind of foundations being very aggressively shaken at the moment, and
so many models.
You're right. They're all the stuff's falling out, and people holding up to the light and going, "Yeah, this doesn't make sense anymore. What were we thinking?" But it's good. It's a good thing. I remember working with a group a little while ago, just earlier this year, and the first thing that the CEO did in this huge sort of company-wide meeting was to get up and just have this extreme moment of vulnerability. I won't share what it was, but it was kind of it was so profound and so impactful for the person who was held aloft and had been placed there to choose for that to be the first thing that they came out with. They went first, and what followed was then a whole day's worth of breaking down barriers and models and sort of paradigms about the stuff that we used to hold dear and we used to hold on to. Just that single decision set the path for. Yeah, for me that was just a really strong moment of leadership where.
Wow.
A moment of vulnerability, maybe authenticity. I kind of have a bit of a pet peeve of the word authentic and authenticity, but maybe we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was definitely vulnerability, and that just kind of, it was like, it made it okay for anybody and everyone in that room to do it, and they went ahead and followed their example. I thought it was wonderful, and hopefully, I think that is a bit of a trend that we see.
Yes.
In a new generation of leaders who are coming through, where it is okay to have friends and not be completely isolated and tell people that you don't have all the answers, and it's important that that's the case.
And really, really liberating for the person. Like, to not have to be God is such a nice thing. Like, you don't have to be God. You don't have to know everything, but you can still be a brilliant leader with a very successful business and an empire without having to know all the answers. I think the biggest lie of all, one of the biggest lies of all, is that I don't need anyone. And vulnerability, sharing vulnerability, goes in the face of that biggest lie that we all face is, oh, don't ask for help. I don't need any help. I've got this. And then we flare it up as well, being British, of like, oh, don't trouble them. Don't trouble anyone as well. That comes in inverted forms too. And actually we need to trouble people. We need help. We need to ask people, so that we can not carry the world on our shoulders, and it's much easier to lead. It's so liberating. Easier.
People want to help. People want to support their leaders.
Yeah, they do. They really
Everyone
do.
wins.
Yeah. But it is easier said than done. Because there is the ego, there is our upbringing, there is our background. Another thing I think leaders are saying before about reconciling themselves to themselves, and being able to look in the mirror. I actually think leadership now does mean getting good coaches, and I think it also means having a bit of therapy, and having someone really skilled at helping you in that reconciliation journey with yourself. To know yourself that well that you can have that level of self-awareness so that you can be safe with your vulnerability. And I think that is business success, actually, nowadays.
Do those two aspects of kind of development work and work on the self, do they come up regularly for you in your coaching practice then? So that you're talking about kind of coaching and therapy. I was interested how you presented those. They're almost like two very separate boxes, two separate angles. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I think therapy, I think you need to be a therapist to know what you're doing properly. So I wouldn't go to a coach, and if it started teetering towards therapy, it's a bit like, ooh, I wouldn't say that's a very safe thing for a coach to do unless they're trained. But it's like a Venn diagram, teaching, training, mentoring, coaching, therapy. They're all on the sort of similar continuum of sorts. But I mean, I know when I'm coaching people, I like going deep with people. I do, and if people want to change, I will hold a mirror up for them and help them look in it, and I will give them playback and feedback to help them for their journey ahead. And sometimes I can see, there's some stuff going on that needs to be looked at that I'm not qualified to do, so I will refer them to I've got a couple of therapists that I refer people to. I say go and do some work there and come back, so that you can carry. So it's the same journey. It doesn't mean like, oh dear, you're broken, let's get you some. It's like, wow, you are being so brilliant and brave on this leadership journey. Let's get you the best so that you come out of this more whole, not just for your business either. I'm a big fan that any coaching, any development work we do doesn't just benefit the business, but it benefits marriages, friendships, parenting. How great to send your spouse off to work, they get development and they come back a better spouse. I mean, that's my big heart. Be a better parent, a more present parent, a greater role model to the local cricket club, whatever it is. That's my big heart when I work with people, that it's the whole person.
I love that. I remember in a previous role, I know you work with a number of different psychometrics, and including Myers-Briggs, and in a previous role there was a banking group we did some work with, and they chose to do a big piece of development with their teams, and as part of the development it was made an offer that their partners could come and have that same development, but in kind of entirely separately. And the side effect of that, you could imagine, right?
Oh my gosh,
there was
just say, I'm so excited.
Much.
I love that. I love it so much.
Isn't that great?
So good. Yes, continue.
Well, I mean, you can imagine what happened as a result. Because there's the team that you work with, and then there's, like, for people who have families and partners and things, they have another team that they come home to, and they have to do work with that team. There are projects to do. There's things to manage, and so often the work self and the kind of family social self just kind of don't meet, and as a result it's really, I meet a lot of people. I definitely share this perception where sometimes there isn't a sense that your partner really understands what the work is that you do, or some of the challenges that you face, because how could they? They're not part of your world and not part of that space, without you filling them in on 20 years of experience, and vice versa. But actually what this did was to give both parties a really useful framework to have a discussion about things like relationships at work, projects, challenges, and then translate that all into some of their other selves and aspects of their life. And the results really spoke for themselves. It was a huge success.
Well, do you know, I mean, a motto I have, is it a motto? Basically a thought. A great thought I have, well, you decide if it's great, is that people are people, but the narrative's different. And that for me has been what's really weathered my career, my professional journey, is because it started from mentoring teenagers to then mentoring young women to then working in churches with people whose sons were coming out of prison and needed to get a job, or working with marriages that were breaking down, or working with people who'd been abused as children but didn't feel safe to talk to anyone apart from me. For example, not that I'm so special, but by proxy, being married to a dog collar makes people feel safe. So I saw that role as a role to really, I took it with great respect. And I work with charities, and I'm from a family business. And so I knew about, commercial profit and loss, all of that from a young age. But it is, people are people. The narrative's just different. So if you are the owner of CEO of an amazing bank, you've got your targets and goals just as much as a woman on her third marriage with 8 children who's just trying to get them food that day. Actually, it's not that different. It's just the narrative, the language and the motivations are going to be different, but we all want to accomplish things in our world. It's just a question of how to unlock people to get where they want to go.
Yeah, and I guess thinking about what you said earlier about having the combination of coaching plus therapy, that gives you insights into narratives from all aspects of your life that you could take one and get help construct a narrative, and then you could take another and then help kind of interrogate a narrative. And that complete picture would then give you a much more fully formed sense of which parts of this story am I happy with, and which parts do I want to change.
Totally. Because actually, with business success as well, I think sometimes when we miss a beat is when we're just going after one thing, and So I learnt this from a client actually, and I love it. Is we've got to know what the essay question is, and I use this a lot. But you often get asked to come and coach or do some development with a team. And you're like, sure, what would success look like? What are we going after? And really getting to the what. What are we doing this for? And the why. And often it's like, they just need some work-life balance is off. Can you just come and do some stuff around work-life balance? And the issue with that is that's their essay question. But is that the right essay we want to answer? Actually, it could be. I mean, I don't know, but it could be if we just have a bit more reverence for digging around and a bit more time to look in the mirror a bit longer at the situation, which is where I put a lot of value when I'm working with clients. I'm like, actually, scoping time is the most important thing. And yes, you pay for that. And yes, that's where most of the value comes from, because it's in doing that we really get the essay question nailed, so that when we go in, we've got like a Swiss Army knife to go and pull out whatever's going on, rather than just launching in and going X, Y, Z. That's why, obviously I use performance climate systems. That's a great tool for one of the ways of really scoping, because it gives such a clear understanding that if you think it's one thing we're going after, you might look at some results like that and see data showing us, actually, it's not that. It's not that. It's actually this. It's on this side of the circle that we've got a problem, not this side. So it helps you diagnose the essay question.
I think thank you for sharing that, and I guess as a PCS practitioner, and that's making me think about your mirror moments you were talking about right at the start of our conversation, because it's effectively, that tool is a data filled mirror that you can hold up at a team or a leader and say, what do you think about this? Should we look a bit deeper? Should we look a bit further? Should we look again and see what else is there that might be giving us some added perspectives, perceptions around what's really going on in our team and what's driving or explaining some of the behaviour that we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah. But I think there is, well, in my experience, and this could be my own imposter kicking in, but I often, and it could be because I'm a woman, I don't want to use that card. It could be all sorts of things, and it could be true. So who knows? But here's just something that I face when I'm working with a client and they are wanting some work, a project, some outcome. There is something in me that feels, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if we just spend some time looking at the diagnostics? It's almost like because there's such a rush to get to solve it. You can solve it now. Can you come and just do a day and just sort this out? That rush, that lack of ability to look in the mirror, but that for me is where the worth is. But I do feel insecure sometimes to really assert that and say this is a very important piece. I don't know if you find that ever, Mark, but yeah, it's just people want such quick. Oh, we've suddenly got a bit of extra cash. Can you come in 3 weeks? It's like, oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, and I do definitely resonate with that. I think, and it's not just PCS; it's other diagnostics. Sometimes are used by a business as a crowbar into remedying a problem with the teams. You can come in, bring a tool. Yeah, you can do a tool, can't you? And we'll do maybe half a day. Yeah, half a day. Fine. and it's like, whoa. What are we talking about here? What are we actually going to be doing? What are some of the team's challenges versus your perspectives of the challenges? And I think they're it's the opposite of the Swiss Army knife analogy you used. It's kind of like, oh yeah, just bring whatever you want and
with a round of that.
Yeah. Hammer them into shape. They'll be all right after that half a day. It'll be fine.
Exactly. But even in that, what's so fun about scoping and really examining what's going on means that the leader and the team in that very process are going to be so much more equipped on their own without me. Teach a man to fish, you teach him for life. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. They are going to be able to have that kind of precision themselves to move forward, to know what to focus on, rather than just being generic with team dynamics. So, yeah.
I think that's really fair. It gives them total ownership over what comes next. Yeah. I think it's much more empowering. I remember once, and I'll save the names to spare the innocent here, but I remember observing a group of psychologists doing some sort of team, I guess, assessment. Very loosely I would use the word assessment, where a group of people were thrown into a really unusual scenario. They had to kind of work their way out, escape room style.
Oh yeah.
But unbeknownst to them, they were being observed by a group of psychologists who kind of then burst into the room and started handing out feedback left, right and centre about what went wrong, what could have improved. No contracting, no kind of psychological safety was gone. And crucially, they owned. The psychologist. They owned all the solutions. They pitched themselves as the experts in the space. I can say this because I've got a psychology background, but psychologists have a tendency to do that, right?
I would if I had a degree in psychology. Yeah. I'd definitely be a know-it-all.
It's a bit like that thing at school where people kind of like, they're kind of covering their work, going, "Oh yeah, I've got some insights, but wait a minute, I'm the expert. I'll show you in a second." It's the wrong way to go about it. Give people the information and let them come up with what happens next.
Yeah.
It happens at a personal level with coaching, and it happens at a team level with team coaching, and it's so much more impactful if they can own what happens next.
Yeah. Oh, always. If you're told, that's why. So with assessments, funnily enough, like I'm a big fan of them, but I think that they are. I think they often just measure what we feel should show up on the day. So for example, if I was doing a Myers-Briggs assessment today compared to 5 years ago, it might be different, and people go, "Oh yeah, I'm really changing, I'm really growing in that area, I've changed." I'm like, I don't agree. I think it's that 5 years ago it could be true, I'm not saying it's not, but I also think what could be true is that what you were doing 5 years ago in that season of your life was dialing up certain versions of how you chose to value functioning, and how you're showing up today is maybe how you're valuing to function today. So an example would be when I did a Myers-Briggs, when I had 4 young children at home, I came out as an ISFJ, okay? And I'm actually an ENTP. If you look at my nature, not my nurture, but I was alone a lot with young children, so I just and I was tired all the time, so I became more introverted in that season. I was in the detail, in the granular, the S sensor, like getting children up, ready, bed, back, repeat. I couldn't dream, I couldn't build, I couldn't think of bigger picture stuff. I was just very present. And then the F is the feeler, like nurturing, relational harmony, is everyone getting on, my family involved in this journey. And then the J is obviously like getting stuff done in routines and things. So it's not that I have learned how to be extroverted and intuitive. I actually always was. I always am. But so the point is, whenever you do one of these assessments, just always know that it's telling you data about where you're valuing performance and showing up in that given day. Whereas if you go on a journey with a coach to explore it verbally and look at your life history a little bit, you piece together and realize, actually, that's not who I am. I function like that because I think I ought to, but actually I'm this. I think especially for women, now like totally boycotting the conversation, but with women, but the whole debate about we want more women in the C-suite, and that debate, actually, I think that the women this is very general here, but the women getting to the C-suite is saying, let's make women to get the ones that will get in the C-suite are the ones that will function as a certain personality type. So they're having to dial that up. but actually that might not be their nature. That's just their nurture, what they're nurturing to kind of behave like. And what I would love to consider in leadership is, what would a C-suite look like if it was truly open and cognitively diverse, with all of the 16 personality types, with all of the 34 strength finders, however we want to cut the pie, rather than having a kind of bias to a type and trying to get people to fit in it. That's why there's so few women in the C-suite, I think, because it's actually asking for a certain personality type in the C-suite. That's my penny's worth. And so a woman or a person will show up as that if that's what that company is valuing.
Yeah. Well, so firstly, I don't think that is a boycott whatsoever on the conversation. I think this is what we should be talking about.
Great.
A lot of the time. I think
Oh, good. I'll boycott
my leadership practice has been shaped by some incredible. Well, actually, almost the majority of my mentors have been amazing female leadership figures. So it's really shaped how I approach leadership and how I think about leadership.
Yeah.
But they are definitely. I know I'm in the minority in terms of my own experience, and I want to do what I can to be an ally to make sure that we address that and we continue talking about it.
I think it's a few different things. So you're trying to chop a tree down from different angles. So there's not just like one chop. There's like various different ways of cutting it.
And that tree's the patriarchy, right? Get it, drop
down with patriarchy.
Timber.
Actually, I just want to nod back that I've got some mentors who are archetypal male leader mentors who are the biggest champions of me, who are so incredible, who give so freely of resources and wisdom and opportunities. So I just want you to know, I'm not like, oh no, women. I love people. People are great if they want to be, or they're idiots if they choose to be. Like, we can all be both, right? And we can all be ignorant. And it's not so much about idiots, it's about being ignorant and just not knowing. I'm highly ignorant. There are things I just don't know. I just don't understand, haven't thought through enough. So, we all have our ignorant areas. But in terms of the C-suite, for example, I think often people are doing tokenism stuff, like, oh, let's get a woman, let's get a white woman, a black woman, a tall woman, a short woman, a white man, a black man, and everything in between. And, not really asking why is a worry. I remember when I used to work in film and diversity just became a thing, and I was working for one of the big channels, and we put our production crew together. And I remember it was when we had fax machines. And a fax came through with a new warning. It was like a warning saying, please be aware that this is the percentage of who you're allowed to employ in your production. And I looked through it, and I was responsible for who was doing what. And it said, it divvied people up into their race. So it said, Asian, 2%, East Asian, 2%, Indian Asian, 1.3%, Africa, North Africa, such percent. Like, it was so, like,
wow.
It was so, like, not many percentages, but all low. But it was when it first happened that I saw and was like, gosh, what's going on here? That approach, whilst it's seeking to be fair and opportunistic for people that might not have opportunities, which I love, I've been grateful for that story. It also, there is tokenism. And so it's kind of like, are people coming because of their own merit, of their own strength? So if you've got a boardroom and we want every personality type in it, that again is a bit like tokenism in a way. And it's got the potential for greatness, but you've got to remember that you've got to have drive, motivation, passion, and towards that given business company as well. And I think it's a really fine line, and hence we're back on the subject of leadership. It's, as a leader, I think you've got to be pretty much tuning into psychology now if you want to be a good leader, with regards to the level of self-awareness to recognise psychological the debate of this, of like personalities, tendencies, wiring. Is that represented in your C-suite? Because that will be what gets the business forward. But also, recognizing drivers, passions, motivations, people that are different to you, and having a value for that, going, oh, that person annoys me, but they're brilliant at their job. Even though it doesn't suit me to have them in the C-suite with me, that's brilliant. That's going to put a cat amongst the pigeons, which is what this business needs. My ego can get out of the way with that and reconcile myself enough with my own triggers. Yes, come on in. There's that as well. There's just not enough hours in the day for these leaders to be psychologists and everything, but that's why we're here, right? But I think there's different considerations, but I think the self-awareness piece is huge, to be able to understand how to artfully create a fair and diverse place of work where it isn't tokenism.
I think the lovely and really inspiring thing about all of that, particularly that self-awareness piece, is that it's an infinite game that you get to play.
Oh, I know. Isn't that a lovely way of putting it?
It never ends, and that's a really good thing. It's a really good, because there's always something interesting to delve into. It's good for people like us, because there's always work and interesting work to be done in helping people interrogate that and explore that and challenge that. But I think just in general, that the idea of never being quite staying still is a really inspirational thing.
It's really fun. And actually, just so you know, as a little point, like self-awareness. So I used to study linguistics, so I really care about language, because it's how we codify everything, and how we build culture and climate. Self-awareness to me isn't just being aware of yourself. That's part of it. But if I was to say, oh yeah, I get impatient sometimes, I'm really self-aware, I get impatient, like, that's ridiculous. That's just stating the obvious. Yeah, I do get impatient. What self-awareness, I think, is when you are able to have empathy and to sit on the other side of what that might feel like for someone different to you in a space, and to see what that feels like for them. Because for me, if I'm impatient, I don't wake up and think, oh, I want to hurt people, I want to be mean. I never do that. But I do wake up and think, I want to do my best. But some days I might get a bit irritable because I'm tired and people are stressing me out. So I might be a bit short and a bit quick with my words. And I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just coping. But on the other side of that, what's it like if someone sees Dolly, let's say, speaking really quickly like that, and her body going more jaggedy like this? And can you just get on with it, Sarah? Can you just get on with it, Richard? If I'm doing that 3, 4, 5 times a week, I know that deep down I'm a softie. But actually, what's that like to repeatedly sit on the other side of me like that? If you've got like, oh, I've got a problem, can I tell Dolly, or is she in one of those jaggy moods? Oh, she's jaggedy, I can't go near her. And then I become someone who needs learning and development to come in and do psychological safety. No, I don't. I just need to have a coach help me look in the mirror at what it's like to be on the other side of me and have empathy. That to me is self-awareness. So it's pretty obvious, but I don't think we push it that far enough.
I absolutely agree, and I think it is worth, again, as a fellow language geek and a word geek,
love it.
To get them right. It is worth really clarifying what we mean when we're talking about this stuff, because there's, in pop psychology, it's just thrown around like nothing, isn't it? Self-awareness, know thyself.
Yes.
And actually, yeah, you're right. There's so many different layers to it. Thank you so much, Dolly. I feel like we could carry on talking for at least another hour or two, and I think maybe I might ask you if you maybe would fancy coming along again and joining us for another episode in a little while, because it feels like there's so many other boxes we could open here and explore together. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation today.
Oh, I loved it, Mark. Thanks so much for having me. It's been really great.
So as we start to wrap up, if our listeners want to find out more about you and what you're all about, and maybe get in touch to work with you, where can they find you?
Easy peasy. My website, dollywaddell.com. So that's DOLLYWADDELL, dollywaddell.com. And I've got a podcast as well, which is my name on any of the major podcast places. It's called the Extraordinary Leaders Podcast, but my name should find it. Instagram, LinkedIn, Dolly Waddell, that's my handle. But get on my mailing list, get in touch. I really love helping people in the space of self-awareness and getting teams into that space, so that they can function like a really well-oiled team. So yeah, do reach out. I'd love to work with anyone who's got an interest going.
Super. Thanks again, Dolly. See you next time.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review on your favourite podcast app. Meanwhile, if you're interested to learn more about how the PCS approach can help you explore leadership, performance, and culture within your business, get in touch with our team at performanceclimatesystem.com and we'll be happy to help. See you next time with another great guest.